The screaming started before anyone understood what was happening. Sarah. Mitchell heard at first a low rumble that grew into terrified shrieks as hundreds of bodies pressed forward like a tidal wave. The 52-year-old Royal Protection Officer had served the British royal family for 28 years, but nothing prepared her for the sight of Princess Catherine. Disappearing beneath a sea of desperate hands and crushing bodies, it was supposed to be a simple walkabout in Liverpool. The spring morning had begun peacefully, with Kate greeting well-wishers outside the children's hospital she was visiting. The crowd barriers stood firm. Volunteers handed out small British flags, and everything followed the carefully planned security protocol. Then someone shouted that Kate was giving out personal gifts, and the lie spread faster than truth ever could. The barrier on the eastern side collapsed first. Sarah saw it happen in slow motion, the metal fence bending, then twisting, then crashing down as 300 people surged forward simultaneously. They weren't trying to hurt anyone. They just wanted to get closer, to touch royalty, to claim a moment they could tell their grandchildren about. But intention meant nothing when human bodies became a crushing force. Kate had been leaning down to accept drawing from a 7-year-old girl when the surge hit. One moment she was smiling, her auburn hair catching the sunlight, her hand extended in that graceful way she had perfected over years of public service. The next moment, she was stumbling backward, her eyes wide with sudden fear as the crowd swallowed the space around her. Sarah's training kicked in before her mind fully processed the danger. She threw herself forward, her body moving on pure instinct. Other protection officers were scattered. Marcus was 20 feet to the left, dealing with another collapsing barrier. James had been checking the route ahead. The local police were overwhelmed, trying to control a crowd that had tripled in size within minutes. It was just Sarah and Kate, and several hundred people who didn't realize they were about to crush a future queen. "Back!" Sarah screamed, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Elderly women were being pushed from behind by teenagers with phones raised high. A young mother clutched her baby, terror written across her face as she fought to stay upright. Everyone was a victim, but everyone was also part of the danger. Kate tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The hospital wall stood directly behind her, gray brick that offered no escape. The crowd pressed closer, a living wall of bodies and outstretched hands. Sarah saw a woman's elbow connect with Kate's shoulder, saw the princess stumble, saw her hand reach out desperately for something to hold on to. Without thinking, Sarah positioned her body directly in front of Kate and spread her arms wide. At 5'9" and trained in defensive tactics, she became a human barrier. But one person couldn't hold back a crowd. "Stay behind me." Sarah shouted over her shoulder to Kate. She could feel the princess's hands gripping the back of her jacket, could hear her rapid breathing. The crowd pushed harder, and Sarah's boots scraped against the pavement as she was forced backward inch by inch. A teenage boy, probably no older than 16, was at the front of the surge. His face showed panic, not aggression. He was being pushed from behind, unable to control his own movement. Sarah locked eyes with him for a split second, and saw his mouth form the word sorry before his body slammed into hers. The impact drove the air from Sarah's lungs. Her ribs screamed in protest, but she planted her feet and pushed back. The boy bounced off her and was immediately swallowed back into the crowd. More bodies replaced him, each collision harder than the last. Sarah's arms began to shake. She was strong, had maintained peak physical condition throughout her career, but she was one person against hundreds. Her shoulder took a hit from someone's purse. Her shin connected with a kicked barrier piece. Pain radiated up her leg, but she couldn't move, couldn't show weakness, couldn't let the crowd sense that the barrier was failing. Behind her, pressed against the wall, Kate had gone completely silent. That silence was somehow worse than screaming. Sarah could feel the princess's body trembling against her back, could sense the absolute terror of someone who had never experienced this kind of danger. Kate had trained for many things: diplomatic incidents, media scrutiny, public speaking, but not this. Not the primal fear of being crushed by people who loved her. "I've got you," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I won't let them through." Another surge. This one was worse. Sarah's right knee buckled, and for a horrifying moment, she thought she would fall. If she fell, Kate would be exposed. If Kate was exposed, the crowd would overwhelm her, and even without malicious intent, people would be trampled. Sarah had seen crowd crush incidents in her training videos, the purple faces, the compressed chests, the people who died standing up because there was no room to fall. She locked her knee and absorbed the impact. Her back pressed hard against Kate, pinning the princess to the wall, but also protecting her. Sarah could hear Kate's breath, coming in short gasps now, could feel her fingernails digging through the jacket fabric. "Where's Marcus?" Kate's voice was barely a whisper, high-pitched with fear. "Coming," Sarah lied. She had no idea where the other officers were. She was alone, her body the only thing standing between a princess and a crowd that had become a living, breathing threat. Someone's hand grabbed Sarah's shoulder, trying to pull her aside. She twisted free, throwing an elbow that connected with something soft. A grunt of pain, then the hand released. Another hand reached for Kate's hair. Sarah saw the fingers extending, saw the flash of a phone camera, saw the desperation for a souvenir. She caught the wrist mid-grab and bent it backward. Not enough to break, but enough to send a clear message. The hand withdrew with a yelp. The crowd was chanting something now. Sarah couldn't make out the words over the roar of voices and the pounding of her own heartbeat in her ears. Her vision had narrowed to a tunnel, focused solely on the bodies pressing forward. The hands reaching out, the constant evaluation of threats. 30 seconds had passed since the barrier fell. It felt like 30 years. Sarah's arms were cement blocks, heavy and aching. Sweat ran down her spine despite the cool spring air. Her jaw was clenched so tight her teeth hurt. But she didn't move, couldn't move. Wouldn't move because behind her, pressed against cold brick with nowhere to run, was a woman who would one day be queen, and Sarah Mitchell had taken an oath, had sworn on her life, that she would protect the royal family with everything she had, even if everything she had was just her own body. Standing firm against an ocean of people who couldn't be stopped, Sarah's left shoulder took another hit, this time from a woman's designer handbag swinging wildly in the chaos. The metal clasp caught her cheekbone, and she felt warm blood trickle down her face. The pain was sharp, immediate, but distant. Somehow her mind had separated from her body, operating on pure survival instinct. "Sarah." Kate's voice cracked behind her. The princess had seen the blood. "I'm fine," Sarah grunted, absorbing another collision from the front. A man's briefcase this time, the corner driving into her stomach. She coughed, but held her ground. "Don't look. Close your eyes." Kate didn't close her eyes. Sarah could feel her watching, could sense the guilt radiating from the woman pressed against her back. Royals weren't supposed to let others get hurt for them. They were raised to believe in their own importance, yes, but also in their responsibility to those who served them. Kate was probably calculating the damage, probably blaming herself for every bruise forming on Sarah's body. The truth was simpler and more complicated. Sarah had joined the Royal Protection Command 28 years ago, fresh from the military with sharp eyes and sharper reflexes. She remembered the interview, remembered the commander asking her one question: "Are you willing to die for someone you've never met?" She had answered yes, without hesitation. Now, with Kate's ragged breathing in her ear and a crowd threatening to crush them both, she understood the weight of that promise. Another surge pushed Sarah's boots back 3 inches. Her heel caught on something, a dropped flag, maybe, or someone's shoe end. She nearly lost her balance. Her arms windmilled, searching for equilibrium. And in that fraction of a second, a gap opened. A hand shot through. Fingers reaching for Kate's jacket. Sarah twisted, using her body as a pivot, and blocked the hand with her hip. The motion sent pain shooting through her bruised ribs, but the hand withdrew. The gap closed. She repositioned herself, spreading her feet wider, making her body bigger, more immovable. "How long?" Kate asked, her voice trembling. "How long can you hold them?" Sarah didn't answer. She didn't know. Her muscles were screaming now, her legs shaking from the constant pressure. Every impact, every collision, every desperate grab from the crowd was draining her reserves. She was strong, but she wasn't superhuman. Physics would win eventually. Numbers would win, unless help arrived first.
Ow.
Where the hell is Marcus? She muttered, scanning the chaos for any sign of her team. The crowd had become an organism, pulsing and heaving with its own rhythm. Faces blurred together, old and young, angry and scared, aggressive and apologetic. A woman was crying, mascara running down her face as she tried to back away, but couldn't move against the tide. A teenager was shouting into his phone. He's probably streaming this disaster to thousands of viewers online. Sarah's radio crackled in her ear, the connection breaking up amid the noise. Mitchell. Status. Marcus's voice distorted and distant. Holding position. She shouted back, hoping he could hear. East wall. Send backup. The radio hissed static, then went silent. Either it had been damaged in the chaos, or the crowd noise was too overwhelming. Sarah was alone again, just her and Kate and the pressing mass of humanity. Then she saw it movement on the left, organized and purposeful. Marcus, finally, with 3 other officers forming a wedge. They were pushing through the crowd, not gently, but with the controlled force of professionals who knew exactly how much pressure to apply without causing injury. Behind them came hospital security, their bright yellow vests visible above the crowd. Relief flooded through Sarah, but she couldn't relax yet. The crowd between her and the rescue team was still dense, still dangerous. One wrong move could trigger a panic, could turn this near disaster into an actual tragedy. Marcus reached her first. He was 6'3" and built like a boxer, all muscle and determination. He positioned himself beside Sarah, his shoulder touching hers, creating an additional barrier. "I've got the left flank," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "James is coming around the right." Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Now that help had arrived, her body was starting to register all the damage. Her ribs were probably cracked. Her left knee felt unstable. Blood was still running from the cut on her cheek, dripping onto her collar. But Kate was safe, pressed between Sarah and the wall. Protected by a growing shield of trained officers, James appeared on her right, younger than Marcus, but equally competent. He locked his arm with Sarah's, creating a human chain. Then another officer she didn't recognize joined, then another. They formed a semicircle around Kate, a living fortress that the crowd couldn't penetrate. "Act." "On my count," Marcus said, his voice carrying authority that cut through the noise. "We're going to walk her back to the hospital entrance. Slow and steady. Don't break formation." The crowd was still pressing, still pushing, but the tide was turning. More security arrived from inside the hospital. Police reinforcements appeared from the street, creating barriers that actually held. The surge began to slow, then stop, then gradually reverse as people realized the danger had passed. 1, Marcus counted. 2, 3. Move. The human shield began to walk backward. Kate safely cocooned in the center. Sarah's legs nearly gave out on the first step, but she locked her knees and kept moving. She couldn't show weakness now, not when they were so close to safety. Through the gaps between officers, Sarah could see faces in the crowd changing. The desperation was fading, replaced by shame and horror as people realized what had nearly happened. A woman was openly sobbing. A man had his hand over his mouth, his eyes wide with shock. The teenage boy who had first collided with Sarah looked devastated, his face pale and stricken. They weren't monsters. They were just people who had made a terrible collective mistake. The hospital entrance was 10 feet away. Then 5. Then they were through the automatic doors, and the noise of the crowd became muffled, distant. The lobby was blessedly empty, cleared by hospital staff who had seen the danger developing. "Clear," Marcus announced, and the human shield dissolved. Officers stepped back, giving Kate space to breathe. The princess stood against the wall for a moment. Her hand pressed to her chest, breathing hard. Her perfectly styled hair was disheveled, her jacket torn at the shoulder where someone had grabbed it. But she was unharmed, not a single visible injury. Then Kate looked at Sarah, and her composed royal mask shattered. Her eyes filled with tears as she took in Sarah's appearance, the blood on her face, the way she was favoring her left leg, the bruises already forming on her arms. You're hurt, Kate whispered, her voice breaking. You're badly hurt because of me. Sarah tried to straighten up, tried to look professional and unaffected. Her ribs protested violently, forcing her to lean against the wall. Just doing my job, ma'am, she managed. That wasn't a job, Kate said fiercely, and Sarah heard steel beneath the tremor. That was heroism. Before Sarah could respond, hospital medical staff rushed forward with a wheelchair and emergency supplies. Someone was checking her ribs. Someone else was cleaning the cut on her face. Through it all, Sarah kept her eyes on Kate, making sure the princess was truly safe, truly unharmed. Only when Kate was surrounded by her remaining security detail. Only when a doctor confirmed she had no injuries. Did Sarah finally let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened? Her legs buckled, and Marcus caught her before she fell. The emergency room bed was too soft, too clean, too quiet after the chaos outside. Sarah lay still while the doctor wrapped her ribs, each breath a reminder of bodies slamming into her chest. Through the thin curtains separating her cubicle from the rest of the ER, she could hear urgent voices, equipment beeping. The controlled emergency that was a hospital on a busy day, 2 cracked ribs. Extensive bruising, and you'll need stitches for that facial laceration, Dr. Patel said, his hands gentle as he examined her knee. You're also showing signs of shock. I want to keep you overnight for observation. Sarah shook her head. I need to get back to the princess. The princess is fine. You, Officer Mitchell, are not. Dr. Patel fixed her with a look that probably worked on difficult patients. Your body just absorbed impacts meant for someone else. Let it heal. Before Sarah could argue, the curtain pulled back. She expected Marcus or another officer with an update. Instead, Kate stood there, still wearing her torn jacket, her face pale but determined. Behind her, 2 protection officers waited at a respectful distance. Ma'am, Sarah tried to sit up, but Dr. Patel pushed her gently back down. Don't, Kate said quickly, moving to the bedside. Please don't get up. Not for me. Not after what you just did. The princess pulled a chair close, sitting in a way that made her seem less royal and more like a concerned friend. Her hands twisted in her lap, a nervous gesture Sarah had never seen before. Kate was always composed in public, always controlled. This raw emotion was something private, something few people ever witnessed. I need to tell you something, Kate began, her voice quiet but steady. When I married William, they gave me security training. Hours and hours of it. What to do in a kidnapping attempt. How to handle a terrorist threat. What to do if someone has a weapon. She paused, swallowing hard. But nobody prepared me for this. For feeling completely helpless while someone else gets hurt protecting me, Sarah wanted to say something comforting, something professional about duty and protocols. But Kate wasn't finished. I felt your body take every hit, the princess continued, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I felt you shaking from the effort of holding them back, and I couldn't do anything except stand there and let you be my shield. Her voice cracked. I've never felt so useless in my entire life. You weren't useless, ma'am, Sarah said firmly. You stayed calm. You didn't panic. You trusted me to do my job. Your job isn't to get beaten for me, Kate shot back, surprising Sarah with the intensity. Your job is protection, yes, but there has to be a limit. What if you'd been seriously injured? What if that crowd had? She couldn't finish the sentence. What if they had both been crushed? What if Sarah's body hadn't been enough? What if the other officers hadn't arrived in time? The unspoken possibilities hung in the air between them. Dr. Patel cleared his throat, tactfully checking monitors and giving them privacy while pretending to work. Outside the curtain, the hospital continued its controlled chaos. Ma'am, Sarah said carefully, 28 years ago, I took an oath. Not just to protect you, but to do it with my life if necessary. Today wasn't about you being more important than me. It was about me being in the right position, with the right training to stop something terrible from happening. She met Kate's eyes directly. If our positions had been reversed, if you'd had the training and I'd needed protection, I know you would have done the same thing. Because that's who you are. Kate was silent for a long moment, absorbing this. Then she did something completely unexpected. She reached out and took Sarah's hand, holding it gently between both of hers. The gesture was intimate, personal, breaking every protocol about royal distance. "I want to know about you," Kate said. "Not Officer Mitchell, the protection agent. You, Sarah. Because someone who would do what you did today. I should know more than just your service record." Sarah was caught off guard. In 28 years of royal service, she'd maintained professional boundaries so carefully that most of the family knew her only as a competent shadow in the background. Now Kate was asking for something different, something real. "I have a daughter," Sarah found herself saying. "Emily, she's 26, works as a veterinarian in Edinburgh. She worries about me constantly, calls every week to make sure I haven't been shot or kidnapped." A small smile touched her lips. "After today, I'm not looking forward to that phone call." Kate squeezed her hand. "Tell me about her." So Sarah did. She talked about Emily's childhood, about raising a daughter while working unpredictable hours for the royal family. She talked about missed school plays and birthday parties, about the guilt that came with choosing duty over motherhood. She talked about Emily's graduation from veterinary school, how proud Sarah had been sitting in the audience in her dress uniform. Kate listened intently, asking questions, genuinely interested. And slowly, as they talked, Sarah began to understand what the princess was doing. She was making this personal, transforming a protection officer into a human being with a family and a life. Making the sacrifice real, not abstract. "Does Emily know what happened today?" Kate asked. "Not yet. I'll call her after." Sarah gestured vaguely at the medical equipment around her. "May I speak with her?" Kate's request was simple but surprising. Not as the Princess of Wales, just as someone who wants to thank her for sharing her mother with us. Sarah's throat tightened. "She would like that, ma'am." "Kate," the princess corrected gently. "When it's just us, please call me Kate." Before Sarah could respond, Marcus appeared at the curtain. His expression was grim. "Ma'am, we need to discuss the security review. The palace is demanding answers about what went wrong." Kate stood, but she didn't release Sarah's hand immediately. "Nothing went wrong," she said firmly, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she used for public statements. A crowd became uncontrollable, and Officer Mitchell performed her duties with extraordinary courage. "That's what my report will say." Marcus looked between them, reading the situation, then nodded. "Understood, ma'am." After Kate left with her security detail, Dr. Patel returned to finish treating Sarah's injuries. He worked in silence for a few minutes, then said quietly, "In 30 years of emergency medicine, I've seen a lot of people do brave things. But what you did today," he shook his head, "that was something special." Sarah closed her eyes, exhaustion finally overwhelming her adrenaline. Her body ached, her ribs screamed with every breath. And she knew the nightmares would come to night dreams of falling, of being crushed, of Kate being swallowed by the crowd, but underneath the pain and fear was something else. A quiet certainty that she had done exactly what she was meant to do. The oath she'd taken 28 years ago hadn't been empty words. Today, she had proven it with her own flesh and blood. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Marcus, media is going crazy. Video of you protecting her is everywhere. You're a hero." Sarah deleted the message without responding. She wasn't a hero. She was just a woman who had stood in front of a princess when the world became dangerous. Nothing more, nothing less. But as she drifted towards sleep, medicated and exhausted, she thought about Kate's hand holding hers, about the tears in the princess's eyes, about the transformation of a professional relationship into something deeper. Maybe that was the real story. Not the dramatic rescue, but the connection formed in its aftermath. The understanding that passed between two women who had survived something terrifying together. The human shield had held, and in doing so, it had revealed something unexpected on both sides' vulnerability. Gratitude, in the beginning of genuine respect that transcended royal titles and job descriptions. The video went viral within 2 hours. Someone in the crowd had captured it all on their phone, the barrier collapsing. Kate stumbling backward, Sarah throwing herself forward to form the human shield. The footage was shaky, the audio overwhelmed by screaming. But the image was unmistakable. One woman standing alone against a surge of humanity, her arms spread wide. Taking hit after hit while the princess pressed against the wall behind her, Sarah learned about it from Emily, who called at 3 a.m, her voice high with panic. "Ma'am." "Oh my God, ma'am. Are you okay?" "I just saw the video. Everyone's sharing it. There's blood on your face, and I'm fine, sweetheart," Sarah said, her voice groggy from pain medication. "Just some bruised ribs. Nothing serious?" "Nothing serious?" Emily's voice cracked. "Ma'am, I watched you get hit at least 15 times. I watched you nearly fall." I watched. She broke into sobs. Sarah closed her eyes, guilt washing over her. This was the part of her job she'd never been able to reconcile. The fear she put her daughter through every time something went wrong. "Emily, listen to me. I'm safe. I'm in a hospital bed with excellent care. Kate is unharmed. Everyone is fine." "But you could have been killed," Emily whispered, "if that crowd had crushed you both." There was no good answer to that. Sarah had faced the same possibility in those terrifying moments. She'd felt her knee buckling, had known she was seconds from being overwhelmed. Only luck and the timely arrival of backup had prevented disaster. "I'm going to be okay," Sarah said instead. "I promise." They talked for another 20 minutes, Emily gradually calming down as Sarah reassured her. Before hanging up, Emily said something that caught Sarah off guard. "Kate called me. The princess. She called me personally." "She did," she said. Emily's voice was thick with emotion. "She said you were the bravest person she'd ever met. She said I should be proud to be your daughter. She thanked me for sharing you with the royal family." Pause. "Ma'am," she was crying. I could hear it in her voice. After the call ended, Sarah lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. The hospital room was quiet, except for the occasional beep of monitors and distant footsteps in the corridor. Her body ached, pain radiating from her ribs with each breath, but her mind wouldn't settle. The door opened quietly. Marcus slipped in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He looked exhausted, his usually sharp uniform rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. "Thought you might be awake," he said, handing her a cup. "The palace is in full crisis mode. The video has 17 million views and counting. You're trending worldwide. The hashtag is #RoyalShield. Sarah groaned. "I don't want to be famous." Too late. Marcus pulled up a chair, grimacing as he sat. He'd taken his own share of impacts during the rescue. But there's good news. The investigation shows the crowd surge started because of a false rumor on social media. No one's blaming security protocols. And the princess? He paused, choosing his words carefully. She's insisting that you receive a commendation. She's personally pushing for it with the palace. That's not necessary. Sarah, you saved her life. Of course it's necessary, Marcus leaned forward. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. How are you really? Not physically. Mentally. Sarah considered the question. She'd been trained to compartmentalize, to separate the trauma of dangerous situations from her daily life. But this felt different. The memory of those moments, the terror in Kate's breathing, the endless impacts against her body, the certainty that she was about to fail kept replaying in her mind. I keep seeing that teenage boy's face, she admitted. The one who hit me first. He was so scared, Marcus. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. None of them were. They were just people who lost control. Crowd psychology is dangerous, Marcus agreed. Even good people can become part of something deadly without realizing it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two colleagues who had survived countless situations together. Then Marcus said, "The media wants interviews. The palace press office is fielding hundreds of requests. They're asking if you'd be willing to do a statement." No, Sarah's response was immediate. This isn't about me. I don't want to be the story. You already are the story. But I'll tell them you declined. Marcus stood, wincing slightly. Try to get some rest. The princess wants to visit again tomorrow, and you should be conscious for it. After he left, Sarah picked up her phone and scrolled through the news coverage. Every major outlet had the story. Royal Guard becomes human shield. Bodyguard's heroic stand saves Princess Kate. Viral video shows officer taking brutal hits to protect Royal. The comments section was overwhelming. Thousands of people praising her courage, sharing the video, dissecting every frame. Some were calling for her to receive honors. Others were criticizing the crowd control measures. A few conspiracy theorists claimed it was staged. Sarah put the phone down, feeling overwhelmed. She'd spent her entire career working in the shadows, invisible and anonymous. Now, in one terrifying moment, she'd been thrust into the spotlight she'd always avoided. A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. A nurse entered, young and friendly, carrying fresh bandages. "How are you feeling, Officer Mitchell?" she asked, checking the monitors. Sore, Sarah admitted. The nurse smiled sympathetically. "I saw the video. What you did was incredible." She began changing the dressing on Sarah's facial wound. "My sister was in that crowd. She called me afterward, absolutely devastated. She said she didn't realize how dangerous it was getting until it was too late. She feels terrible about what happened to you." Sarah thought about the faces she'd seen, the woman crying, the man with his hand over his mouth, the teenage boy's devastated expression. "Tell your sister it's okay. I understand. She'll be relieved to hear that." The nurse finished the bandaging and stepped back. "Can I ask you something? In that moment, when you were holding them back, were you scared?" Sarah considered lying, giving a brave answer that would fit the hero narrative the media was creating. But something about the nurse's genuine curiosity made her answer honestly. "Terrified," she said quietly. "I thought my knee was going to give out. I thought we were both going to die." The nurse nodded slowly. "But you didn't run. You didn't step aside." "No," Sarah agreed. "I didn't." "That's what makes it brave," the nurse said simply. "Not the absence of fear. The choice to stay despite it." After the nurse left, Sarah lay back against the pillows, thinking about that choice. In the moment, it hadn't felt like a choice at all. It had felt like the only possible response, the natural outcome of years of training and a deeply ingrained sense of duty. But maybe that was what courage really was. It's not a conscious decision to be heroic, but the accumulated result of thousands of smaller choices made over a lifetime. The choice to join the military, the choice to apply for royal protection, the choice to take her training seriously, to stay fit, to show up every day ready to do a job that most people would never fully understand. Kate had called her brave. Emily had watched the video with terror and pride. The world was calling her a hero. But lying in that hospital bed, bruised and exhausted, Sarah felt like exactly what she was, a woman who had done her job in an impossible situation, and somehow survived to tell about it tomorrow. She would face the questions, the media attention, the inevitable security review. Tomorrow, she would have to be strong and professional. Tonight, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The fear, the pain, the overwhelming relief that both she and Kate had survived. And underlying it all, a quiet pride that when the moment came, when everything depended on one person standing firm against impossible odds, she had been that person the human shield had held. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the grand reception room at Windsor Castle, her dress uniform pressed to perfection despite the still healing ribs that made deep breathing uncomfortable. Her daughter Emily stood beside her, quiet and proud. While palace officials moved efficiently around them, preparing for the ceremony, this wasn't how Sarah had wanted things to go. She'd argued against the formal recognition, insisting that she'd simply done her job. But Kate had been immovable, and when a future queen makes a request, even protection officers have limited ability to refuse. The room was smaller than Sarah expected, intimate rather than grand. Only close family and select staff had been invited. William stood near the window, looking every inch the future king in his formal attire. George, Charlotte, and Louis sat quietly in the front row. Unusually well-behaved for children who had been told this was an important occasion. Then Kate entered, and the room fell silent. She wore a deep blue dress, elegant and understated, with a simple pearl necklace. But it wasn't her clothing that caught Sarah's attention. It was her eyes. They found Sarah immediately, holding a depth of emotion that transcended the formal occasion. "Officer Sarah Mitchell." Kate's voice was clear and steady, carrying the authority of her position. "Please step forward." Sarah moved to the center of the room, her polished shoes clicking softly on the marble floor. Emily had helped her practice walking without favoring her injured knee, but she still felt stiff, aware of every bruise that hadn't quite healed. Kate held a velvet box, and for a moment, the princess's composed mask slipped. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, revealing the Royal Victorian Medalla, personal gift from the monarchy. "Awarded for exceptional service?" "3 weeks ago," Kate began, her voice carrying to every corner of the quiet room. "I've witnessed the truest form of courage I have ever seen. Not the courage of grand gestures or dramatic pronouncements, but the courage of someone who stood between danger and another person without hesitation, without thought for personal safety, without any expectation of recognition." Sarah kept her eyes forward, professional and still, even as her throat tightened. "Officer Mitchell has served my family for 28 years, Kate continued. "In all that time, she has been professional, dedicated, and utterly reliable. But on that day in Liverpool, she became something more. She became a living barrier against harm, absorbing impacts meant for me, holding her ground when every instinct must have screamed to move aside." Kate stepped closer, the medal in her hands. "I felt every hit she took. I felt her body shaking from the effort of holding back that crowd. I knew she was in pain, knew she was reaching the limits of human endurance, and still she didn't move. She gave me her hands in case I needed to hold on, her voice to tell me I was safe, and her body as a shield when there was nothing else left to give." The princess's voice cracked slightly. She paused, composed herself, then continued. "This medal represents the gratitude of the royal family, but it cannot represent what I personally owe to Sarah Mitchell. You cannot put a price on someone's life, and you cannot adequately thank someone for being willing to give theirs for yours." Kate pinned the medal to Sarah's uniform, her fingers gentle and precise. Then, breaking all protocol, she pulled Sarah into a careful embrace, mindful of the still healing ribs. "Thank you," Kate whispered, so quietly only Sarah could hear. "Thank you for being there. Thank you for not letting go. Thank you for coming back to us." Sarah felt tears threatening and fought them back. This wasn't the time or place, but Kate's gratitude was so genuine, so deeply felt, that maintaining professional distance felt impossible. When Kate stepped back, her own eyes were bright with unshed tears. William stepped forward, shaking Sarah's hand with surprising warmth. "Your family now," he said simply. "Whatever you need, whenever you need it. We don't forget the people who stand for us when it matters most." The ceremony continued with refreshments and quiet conversation. Emily talked with Kate about veterinary medicine, the two women finding easy common ground despite the vast difference in their circumstances. George asked Sarah if being a bodyguard was scary. With the innocent directness of a child who didn't understand the weight of such questions, sometimes Sarah told him honestly, "But that's okay. Brave people are scared too. They just don't let the fear stop them from doing what's right." George considered this seriously, like how Mummy stood still when everyone was pushing. Sarah glanced at Kate, who had overheard and looked surprised. "Exactly like that," Sarah agreed. "Your mummy was very brave that day too." Later, as the reception wound down, Sarah found herself alone with Kate on a balcony, overlooking the castle grounds. The spring afternoon was beautiful, with flowers blooming in the formal gardens below. "I'm going back to work next week," Sarah said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Desk duty for another month while I finish healing, then back to active protection." Kate turned to look at her, concern evident. "Are you sure? After what happened, no one would blame you for stepping back." "I'm sure," Sarah said firmly. "This is what I do, who I am. One bad day doesn't change that." "One bad day?" Kate's laugh was soft and slightly incredulous. "Sarah, you were nearly crushed protecting me. Most people would be traumatized." "Oh, I'm traumatized," Sarah admitted with unexpected honesty. "I wake up at 3 in the morning sometimes, feeling the crowd pressing in. I have nightmares where I can't hold them back, where you're hurt because I wasn't strong enough. She met Kate's eyes directly. But I'm also a professional who knew what she was signing up for. The risk was always there. This time it just became real. Kate was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "The media has been relentless. They want to turn you into a symbol, a hero for the modern age. How are you handling it?" By ignoring most of it, Sarah replied, "I did one statement saying I was doing my job, nothing more. The rest is noise." She paused. "Though I have to admit, my daughter has been enjoying her sudden fame as the brave officer's daughter. She's been asked to speak at 2 schools about careers in public service." Kate smiled. "Emily's wonderful. You've raised an impressive young woman." "I tried," Sarah said quietly, "though I missed a lot while I was busy protecting other people's children." "She understands why," Kate said. "She told me she's always known her mother was doing important work, even when it meant missing birthdays and holidays." The princess hesitated, then added, "She also told me you once missed her university graduation because you were protecting William during an overseas tour." Sarah winced. That had been one of her biggest regrets. He was visiting a war zone. The security situation was complicated, I know. Emily knows too. But I also know it must have hurt. Kate touched Sarah's arm gently. "The sacrifice you've made for us isn't just about that one day in Liverpool. It's about 28 years of putting our safety before your own life, your own family, your own needs." "I made that choice," Sarah said. "Freely, I know. But that doesn't mean it should go unrecognized." Kate looked out over the gardens. "I've been thinking about what happened, about the choices we all made that day. You chose to be a shield. I chose to trust you completely. The crowd chose to surge forward without thinking about the consequences. And in the aftermath, we all have to live with those choices." "The crowd wasn't malicious," Sarah said. "I've watched the videos, read the statements from people who were there. They were just excited, caught up in the moment. They didn't realize the danger until it was too late. I know. And I don't blame them." Kate's voice was thoughtful. "But I also can't forget what it felt like to be pressed against that wall, hearing you grunt in pain every time someone hit you, feeling your body shaking from the effort of holding them back. I can't forget how helpless I felt, how much I depended on you in that moment. And that's my job," Sarah said gently. "Letting you depend on me when things get dangerous." "It's more than a job now," Kate said, firmly, at least to me. "You're not just Officer Mitchell anymore. You're Sarah, the woman who stood for me when it mattered most. The woman who has a daughter she's incredibly proud of, who drinks her coffee black, who has nightmares but comes back to work anyway because it's who she is." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Again, Mom," Kate the princess corrected. "Please, Kate Sarah. Amanda and I don't know how to be anything other than your protection officer. I've maintained professional boundaries my entire career. I don't know how to navigate." This, she gestured vaguely between them. "Neither do I," Kate admitted, "but I think we figure it out together. Because something changed that day in Liverpool. I can't go back to seeing you as just another member of the security team. You're someone who knows what I sound like when I'm terrified, who has felt my hands shaking with fear, who has literally stood between me and death." She turned to face Sarah directly. "You're someone who matters to me. As a person, not just a position." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. Her training hadn't covered this scenario, what to do when the person you're sworn to protect sees you as a friend, as someone worth knowing beyond professional capacity. "I'm still going to do my job," Shay finally said. "I'm still going to stand between you and danger if it comes to that again." "I know," Kate replied, "but maybe now we can also have coffee together sometimes. Maybe Emily can join us for lunch when she visits London. Maybe you can Tay?"